All right, this will be for the con assignment, completing the square intermediate. So they want us to rewrite this function by completing the square. Okay, and look at the form that they want our answer to be. So keep that in mind for later. But we're going to complete the square on this function here. All right, I'm just going to rewrite it at first. So remember the two steps from the intro. Okay, you want to look at, well, you know what? Let me fix this for a moment. I suggest after the term with x, you leave a blank space. Okay, and then write the constant term. And then leave another blank space. All right, and you'll see why. So remember from the intro video, you take the constant that's with x, you take half of it. So half of positive 2 is just positive 1. And then you square it. Okay, and 1 times 1 is just 1. Now, if you're going to add 1 right here, you want to subtract 1 right here. So it balances out. Okay, because 1 minus 1 is just 0. All right. So we're going to factor this part right here. And then we're going to have a separate constant on the end. So in order to factor this part right here, it's very easy. You just take the number that you got when you took half, okay? And you use that number to factor. So it's going to be x plus 1. And that whole thing is squared, okay? And then you just calculate the constant term on the end. 26 minus 1 is just 25. Positive 25. So that's it. All right. So we got it in this form. Remember, in algebra, you can always do the same thing to both sides of an equation, right? But here, we don't have an equal sign. So since we added 1 here, we subtracted 1 here. And 1 minus 1 is just 0. So we didn't change anything. We just changed the form that it was in. So we have x plus 1 squared. So type the 1 in here. And we have a plus 25 on the end. Okay, so for this one here, it's almost the same thing, except it's set equal to 0. So in this answer, it's actually an equation because we have an equal sign. All right. So it looks like the constant term is going to be on the right-hand side of the equation. All right. So again, I'm just going to recopy this. And before I complete the square, I'm going to move this 49 over here. Okay, because you can see there's a constant term on the right-hand side of the equal sign. So we still have x squared minus 14x. And positive, negative, this cancels. However, just like before, I'm going to leave a blank space here. And that's going to equal 0 minus 49. That's negative 49. And I'm also going to leave a blank space on the other side of the equal sign. Okay, the reason being is because we're going to add the same number to both sides, which we're allowed to do. So completing the square, look at the number that's with x. All right, so you take half. half of negative 14 is just negative 7. And then you square it. So negative 7 squared is going to be a 49. Now if you add 49 on this side, you have to add 49 on this side as well. Alright? And now we can rewrite or factor this whole thing using the number that we got when we took half. So it's just going to be x minus 7 squared, and that's going to equal negative 49 plus 49. That cancels, it's just 0. So that's it. So it's x minus 7, so since it's plus here, you just type negative 7 in the box, and on the right hand side we got a 0. Now on this one here, we didn't really have to do this extra step. If you look at it, you can just factor this one as is into x minus 7 squared. Okay, so I did an extra step with the adding and subtracting on both sides. So if you recognize that you can factor it, recognize if you can factor it right away, you don't have to do this. Alright, so on this one, it's not set equal to 0. Okay, so we don't really have an equation, but I'm going to rewrite this. X squared minus 12x. And I'm going to leave a blank space. And then plus 50. And then leave another blank space. Okay? So we don't have any equal sign here. So you take half of the number with x. Half of negative 12 is going to be a negative 6. And then you square it. Negative 6 squared is 36. Okay, if you add 36 here, you want to do a minus 36 here. Alright, like I said, we do not have an equal sign. So we can't do the same thing to both sides. We want to do the opposite thing to just one side. See, if you add 36 and then subtract 36, that's just 0. So we didn't add or subtract anything, really. Okay? Now factoring this part right here, use the number you got when you took half. So it's going to be x minus 6. And that whole thing is squared. And on the end right here, we have positive 50 and negative 36. That's going to be a positive 14. So that's it. Okay, you can always check if you want to use FOIL and unpack this right here and see if it equals this, but it's going to work every time as long as you use the number you got when you took half. Okay, so we have x minus 6 squared, so type the negative 6 in here, and then the plus 14 on the end. Okay, last one, and like I said, you don't have to use completing the square if it's factorable as is. Okay, I can tell by looking at this problem, I can factor it. Okay, so x squared minus 2x plus 1 equals 0. Okay, how do we factor this? Well, do we have two numbers that multiply to positive 1 and add to negative 2? Let's see the factors for positive 1. We have 1 times 1, and we have negative 1 times negative 1. Okay, this right here adds to negative 2. So we can rewrite this with the two negative 1s. we have x minus 1 times x minus 1, and that equals 0. Okay, so I just used the two negative ones to rewrite this. And of course, this is just x minus 1 squared. And that equals 0. So that's it. So some of them, if they're in this form and they equal 0, you might not have to complete the square. It might be that you can just factor this. Alright, so keep an eye out for the shortcut. So x minus 1 squared equals 0. This is negative 1 in here, and this is 0.